No way.
I don't know.
No way. No way. I just wanted to be a good basketball player. I thought I was going to be the first pick because everybody, everybody had predicted me to be the first pick. But what had happened, Portland had the first pick.
It's true. The legend was real. For almost 50 years, people whispered about Bob McAdoo. They said he signed a secret contract in a hotel room. They said the NBA tried to blackball him before he ever played a single game. They said an owner paid $200,000 in cash to make it all go away. And they said that same owner took the contract and flushed it down a toilet to destroy the evidence. Most people thought these were just stories, locker room folklore. But Bob McAdoo finally opened up, and the truth is wilder than anyone imagined. If you're feeling the energy already, hit that hype button for this legend finally getting his respect. This is the story of a player the league tried to erase, but whose talent was too powerful to disappear. To understand how Bob McAdoo became the center of the biggest scandal in basketball history, you need to know what the sport looked like in 1972. It was chaos. The NBA was the old guard, conservative and powerful, controlling the major markets and television deals. But there was a rival, the American Basketball Association, the ABA, started in 1967 as the upstart league that played by different rules. They had a red, white, and blue ball. They had a three-point line, and they had no respect for the NBA's traditions. The war between these two leagues wasn't about ticket sales. It was about control of the players. The NBA had a strict rule. You couldn't enter the league until your college class graduated, 4 years minimum. But the ABA ignored that rule completely. They went after underclassmen, offering them money and freedom years before the NBA would even look at them. Spencer Haywood was the first to break through. He challenged the NBA's rule in court and won. Julius Erving followed him to the ABA. The floodgates were opening, and the NBA was terrified. Into this war walked Bob McAdoo. He was 6'9", but he moved like a guard. He could rebound like a center, but he could shoot from 20 feet out. He was a junior at the University of North Carolina, and he had just led the Tar Heels to the Final Four. Scouts from both leagues were drooling. He was the perfect weapon, the kind of player who could change a franchise overnight. Both leagues wanted him, but the ABA moved first. The Virginia Squires were desperate for legitimacy. They already had Julius Erving, the most exciting player in basketball. If they could pair him with Bob McAdoo, they would have a dynasty. So the Squires did something sneaky. The ABA held what they called a secret draft. It was a way to claim college players without exposing them publicly. If a player was drafted publicly, they would lose their college eligibility immediately. So the draft stayed hidden. The Squires selected McAdoo in that secret process, and then, according to rumors that would haunt him for decades, they did something even bolder. They got him to sign a contract. The details were murky. It allegedly happened in a hotel room, a covert operation designed to lock McAdoo into the ABA before the NBA draft even happened. If true, it meant the best player in the country was already off the market. For the NBA, this was a nightmare. It meant the ABA was winning. It meant their rival league was stealing the future of basketball right out from under them. The media caught wind of the rumors, and the reaction was brutal. In 1972, player freedom was a new concept. Athletes were expected to follow the path: 4 years of college, the NBA draft, and gratitude. McAdoo's connection to the ABA was seen as betrayal. He was called a traitor to the system. The uncertainty sent shockwaves through every front office in the league. Was he even available, or was he a poisoned asset that would bring nothing but lawsuits? That's when the NBA commissioner stepped in. Walter Kennedy was under pressure. The ABA's antitrust lawsuit against the NBA was still ongoing. The league couldn't afford another legal disaster. When the rumors about the Squires contract became too loud to ignore, Kennedy made a shocking decision. He sent a private memo to all 17 NBA teams. The message was clear: do not draft Bob McAdoo. The commissioner warned that McAdoo was likely under a valid contract with the Virginia Squires. Any team that tried to sign him would face massive lawsuits from the ABA. It was a blackball order. Kennedy was trying to make the best player in basketball disappear. The biggest victim of this memo was the Portland Trail Blazers. They had the #1 overall pick in the 1972 NBA draft. They desperately needed a star. The front office loved McAdoo. Under normal circumstances, picking him would have been automatic, but the commissioner's warning terrified them. They were convinced that drafting McAdoo would be a wasted pick, or worse, it would drag them into a legal battle that could destroy their franchise. So Portland made one of the worst decisions in sports history. They passed on Bob McAdoo McAdoo? Instead, they drafted LaRue Martin, a center from Loyola University, Chicago. Martin had one decent game against Bill Walton. That was it. He played 4 seasons in the NBA and averaged 5 points per game. Meanwhile, Bob McAdoo would become an MVP. The secret contract rumor had successfully scared off the team with everything to lose. But one team refused to be scared. The Buffalo Braves held the second pick. Buffalo was an expansion team, only 2 years old, struggling for attention in a Rust Belt city. Their owner was Paul Snyder, a frozen food magnate who made his fortune with Freezer Queen. Snyder was aggressive, stubborn, and willing to take risks. He and his general manager, Eddie Donovan, decided to ignore Commissioner Kennedy's warning. They drafted Bob McAdoo with the second overall pick. It was a massive gamble. If they were wrong, they had wasted a franchise-altering pick. If they were right, they had stolen the future. Drafting McAdoo was only step one. Signing him was the real challenge. The Virginia Squires still held the contract. They claimed legal ownership of McAdoo's rights, but the Squires had a weakness. Like most ABA teams, they were broke. They had talent on the court, but they struggled to meet payroll. Paul Snyder saw the opportunity and went straight at it. He opened back-channel negotiations with Squires owner Earl Foreman. The solution was money. Pure, brutal financial force. Snyder reportedly offered the Squires a settlement of $200,000 to void the contract and release their claim on McAdoo. In 1972, that was an astronomical sum. It was enough to keep an ABA team operating for months. At the same time, McAdoo's agent built a legal defense. They argued that McAdoo was under 21 when he signed the contract. Back then, the age of majority was 21 in most states. No parent or guardian was present at the signing. That meant the contract was legally voidable by a minor. The combination of Snyder's cash and the legal loophole forced the Squires to fold. They took the money and walked away. Bob McAdoo was free. But that's not where the story ends. What happened next became the most infamous legend in NBA history. Paul Snyder was paranoid. He feared the NBA league office might demand to see the contract. He feared the ABA might change their mind and sue anyway. So once the settlement was finalized and the physical document was in his hands, Snyder made a choice. He didn't file the contract. He didn't lock it in a safe. According to multiple accounts, including McAdoo's own recent confirmations, Snyder took the contract into a bathroom. Some say it was the Braves' locker room. Others say it was a hotel suite, but the result was the same. Snyder tore the contract into pieces, and then he flushed it down the toilet. It was a mafia-style move. By destroying the contract, Snyder made sure there was no smoking gun, no evidence for Commissioner Kennedy or a courtroom to examine. The legal document that had nearly ended Bob McAdoo's NBA career before it started was gone, swirling away in the Buffalo plumbing. It allowed the Braves to sign McAdoo to a fresh NBA contract, as if the ABA deal never existed. For decades, people treated this story as myth, but its persistence in oral history and McAdoo's recent acknowledgments paint a clear picture. The 1970s basketball business was the Wild West, and Bob McAdoo's entry into the NBA wasn't a standard draft process. It was a covert operation involving secret payments and destroyed evidence. Once he hit the court, Bob McAdoo proved that every risk was worth it. He won Rookie of the Year in 1973, but it was his second season when he truly changed basketball. Head coach Jack Ramsey realized something revolutionary. McAdoo was too fast for traditional centers. He was too big for forwards. So Ramsey unleashed him as a high post scorer and a transition weapon. McAdoo didn't just score, he dominated with efficiency and volume the league had rarely seen. From 1973 to 1976, Bob McAdoo went on one of the greatest individual runs in NBA history. In the 1973 to 74 season, he led the league in scoring with over 30 points per game. In 1974 to 75, he won the MVP award, averaging 34.5 points per game. That's a 6'9" center leading the entire NBA in scoring while shooting over 50% from the field, and he did it mostly on jump shots. He was the prototype for the modern stretch big, decades before the term existed. He won 3 straight scoring championships. But despite the success, the rumors followed him. Critics called him selfish because he shot the ball 25 to 30 times a game. Owners called him greedy because he had been at the center of a contract. The Buffalo Braves were a good team. They pushed the eventual champion Celtics to 6 games in the 1974 playoffs, but they never made the finals. The media blamed McAdoo's style of play instead of the roster around him. The hated reputation was born. The Buffalo dream ended fast. Paul Snyder sold the team to John Y. Brown Jr., the Kentucky Fried Chicken mogul. Brown had no loyalty to Buffalo or Bob McAdoo. He saw players as assets to be stripped and sold. He immediately started dismantling the team to save money. He traded away Moses Malone and Adrian Brian Dantley, McAdoo saw what was happening. He knew his value and demanded a contract renegotiation. Brown refused. Instead, he launched a public smear campaign, painting McAdoo as a selfish malcontent. In the middle of the 1976-77 season, Brown traded the reigning MVP to the New York Knicks for John Giannelli in cash. It was a purely financial move. An MVP sold for pennies on the dollar. The selfish label was now cemented. McAdoo arrived in New York expecting to save the franchise. Instead, he walked into a war zone. The Knicks had also acquired Spencer Haywood, the other great hardship case who had challenged the NBA's rules. On paper, a frontcourt of McAdoo and Haywood should have been unstoppable, two superstar scorers. But the reality was dysfunctional. The Knicks also signed Marvin Webster, a defensive center who clogged the paint. This forced McAdoo to play power forward and Haywood to play small forward. Neither was comfortable. The spacing didn't exist. The friction between McAdoo and Haywood became legendary. They were both alpha scorers who needed the ball. Rumors of locker room fights leaked to the press. McAdoo was accused of chomping on a towel during timeouts and complaining that he hadn't gotten a shot in 3 straight possessions. Haywood, dealing with his own substance abuse battles, clashed with McAdoo's intense focus. The New York media was ruthless. They branded McAdoo and Haywood as poster children for the me generation of the NBA. Talented, rich, but selfish and unable to win. The experiment failed. McAdoo was traded to Boston, where injuries derailed him, then to Detroit, then to New Jersey. In 4 years, the former MVP played for 4 different teams. The journeyman label stuck. The narrative became that he was a coach killer, a player who put up stats but whose teams always imploded. By 1981, Bob McAdoo was considered washed up. He was 30 years old, plagued by injuries and carrying a decade of baggage. But Jerry West and Pat Riley of the Los Angeles Lakers saw something others didn't. They needed offensive firepower off the bench to support Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson. McAdoo signed with the Lakers and accepted a role that would have destroyed his ego 5 years earlier. He became the 6th man. He wasn't the star anymore, he was the insurance policy, and he thrived. Freed from the burden of carrying a franchise, McAdoo became the most overqualified bench player in league history. He provided instant offense, scoring 15 to 20 points in limited minutes. More importantly, he fit into the Showtime culture. He didn't complain about touches, he played defense, he mentored young players. The results spoke for themselves. McAdoo was a key contributor to the Lakers' championship runs in 1982 and 1985. Seeing Bob McAdoo celebrate with an NBA title was the ultimate rebuttal to the loser label. He proved that the selfishness narrative was a myth created by bad situations. In a winning environment, he was a champion. The haters were silenced. Decades after his retirement, Bob McAdoo's name returned to the spotlight with HBO's series Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. The show dramatized the 1980s Lakers, but it drew harsh criticism from the real figures it portrayed. Jerry West hated it, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hated it, and Bob McAdoo was furious. He felt the show marginalized his role, treating him as a background character instead of the Hall of Fame contributor he was. In interviews and on social media, McAdoo called out the lies and disrespectful portrayals. His anger wasn't just about screen time, it was about 50 years of distortion. He saw Winning Time as another vehicle spreading the selfish party lifestyle rumors that had followed him since 1972. The controversy pushed McAdoo to finally take control of his narrative. He started appearing on player-led podcasts like All the Smoke and the Knuckleheads. These were platforms where he could tell his story without filters. No traditional media spin, no Hollywood dramatization. And that's where he finally addressed the rumors that had defined his career. The secret contract, the blackballing, the $200,000 payoff, and yes, the flush. He spoke about it with clarity and even humor. For the first time, the world heard the truth directly from him. Bob McAdoo's journey is one of the most misunderstood stories in sports history. For the first half of his career, he was a pawn in a billion-dollar war between leagues. He was labeled a traitor for signing a contract that gave him financial security. He was blackballed by a commissioner terrified of litigation. He was called selfish for demanding fair pay from owners who treated him like a disposable asset. But the facts tell a different story. The secret contract wasn't betrayal, it was leverage. The flush wasn't a myth, it was a survival tactic by ownership to bypass league rules. The hated reputation wasn't a character flaw, it was the result of dysfunction in Buffalo and New York. Today, Bob McAdoo stands vindicated. He's a Hall of Famer, a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, a 2-time EuroLeague champion with Olimpia Milano after his NBA career ended. He revolutionized the game as the first first true stretch big, decades before the position became standard. He mentored future legends. He won championships. And now, finally, he's telling his truth. The contract may have been flushed down a toilet in 1972, but the talent it represented could never be washed away. Bob McAdoo survived the darkest corners of 1970s basketball politics to become a legend they couldn't control. It's true. They tried to flush away his story, but Bob McAdoo's legacy was never meant to disappear.